Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noisera, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, Domestic Reformations, Competitive World Powers, and the Elite's Vampirism. Why? Because the yellow vest protests have hit America, and now they're talking about government shutdowns, Trump's withdrawing troops from Syria and Afghanistan, as well as the banning of bump stocks. Russian President Vladimir Putin has talked about hypersonic weaponry, while we have China working on a soul-scanning MRI device. Lastly but not least, we have mainstream media reporting on things called Ambrosia, or legal vampirism. That's right, there's a whole lot of crazy things going on. But before we do so, a few quick updates for you guys and gals. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a Happy Holidays as well. We recently started a new health and wellness page called Liberation Legion. I hope you guys follow it. We'll put that in the link in the description bar below, as well as our Fellowship and Freedom episode with Leslie Galbraith. Powerful stuff. Lastly, we have our season finale coming up, and you good people get to decide whether or not you want it on Instagram Live or on the radio. You can let me know. And with that being said, let's start the show. That's right, they're still here. And guess what? It's the end of the year. I'm shocked as well. The censorship, I have not effectively compiled a list of all the topics and things that we have been hit with this year, but wow. Yeah, we're still here. We're still kicking. We're still alive. Trying to do what we can. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noisera, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer. And wow, there is no news about the yellow vest protests. It's like it literally disappeared from the news cycle. I wonder why. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things in this edition. You know, China has a soul-scanning MRI device. Trump withdrawing troops from Syria, but banning the bump stocks. And clearly, this thing called Ambrosia, legal vampirism. Mainstream media is reporting on how the elites are transfusing blood. That's scary. That's sketchy. But spiritually, people should already feel these types of things. Now, before I start with this episode, if you guys didn't check out the previous episode, or at least the previous Fellowship and Freedom with Leslie Galbraith of Our Cosmic Day, please definitely go do so. I definitely like it whenever other people come on the show. Sometimes I hate hearing myself talk. This is why I like having other people on, because we can talk about so many different things, and they're able to say things that I'm not. And I guess what I'm really trying to say is, you know, I'm going to go into 2019 with a lot of love, a lot of care, and a lot of appreciation and gratuity. What other blessing is it to be involved in somebody else's life like this? To do what we are doing, and what I have lined up too. Oh my gosh. You know, there's no way for me to truly explain it to you guys other than saying thank you for letting me do these things. Thank you for being witness to these types of things. We have a lot of problems in this world, no doubt. But if you guys have been paying attention for the past few episodes, I've talked about how I feel like I've failed you because I want to do better. I want to talk about our achievements, our goals, what we've made. We've talked about it constantly here on the show. Renaissance versus revolution, creating a culture of compassion, understanding, creativity, co-creation. This is what we're here to do. And I know the way I probably said that right there, it's like, wow, that's some pretty rough love you're offering. Yeah, it's rough love. Yes, it's rough love. Because it was easy loving that got us here. And if you guys have heard me talk about Pope Francis and his faux compassion, that's what he's offering. They're offering you fake love. Non-discerning, non-filtering, not authentic, genuine love. They're offering you that candy-coated, half-watered-down wisdom. I'm not trying to do that to you guys. I'm trying to offer you the fullest and the real. You know, we have a lot of people, and this is something I'm probably sure we'll talk about all throughout the entirety of the show. These people, they come in the name of peace, security, and freedom, and yet they offer just that, a prison, a jail cell. These people, they come off as if, oh, we're the saviors of the planet. You know, we need to cut carbon emissions. Oh, we need to do this, cut the population. Oh, we need to, you know, modify the foods. They do all this stuff from a standpoint of faux compassion, and then we believe them. Hello, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. We believe them, and then we wonder 10 generations down the line, or a few generations down the line, I guess smoking cigarettes weren't good for us. I guess those vaccines weren't good for us. I guess all those pharmaceuticals weren't good for us. No, it's because you have to understand, even the devil masquerades as an angel of light. This is how manipulation and deception works. They got you. Congratulations, you played yourself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we have to be more honest, more authentic, more genuine, more real, so that we can filter what is not real, what does not benefit us, what does not push us forward. You see, got a lot of people that are not committed, and we cannot go back. As we're wrapping up 2018, I hope you all had a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. We're at the end of the year. We're starting something new, and we have a whole lot more to do. If you guys are unfamiliar, we are going to do a live video episode for our season 7 debut. Level ups, because that's what's important. This is the next logical step. I'm really not trying to jinx it. We just have a lot of things lined up for you guys. So I hope you're going to stay with us. I hope you see changes happen. I'll say this too. I'll say this, and I'll start the show. I got a message from one of our listeners, and these are the types of messages I live for, man. Guys like, hey man, I've been following your page and your YouTube and your podcast for a few years now, and honestly, I had to stop following it because it created a disconnect between my friends and my family, my normal life. I want to see you do more. I want to see you put out here. I want to have these conversations be normal. I don't want to be disconnected from my friends. Basically saying I want you to step up more so this stuff can be normal. This stuff has to be normal now. Mind control is real. We've talked about it all year. Chemtrails are real. Bill Gates is behind it. GMOs are a thing. Bayer and Monsanto are merging together. Because we have this information, it is now normal. Okay, these are no longer conspiracy theories. We have to advance these theories and look at where we're at. To surmise the message that I got from the listener and from the follower, you have been heard. Trust me, I am trying to do my best, and even better than my best. That's all we can do. Now, this ties into being better than best. This ties into what I wanted to talk about right off the bat to start the show. Now, as I said before, I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Or, not Thanksgiving. Christmas. Wrong holiday. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas, because over the past weekend, there were Yellow Vest protests in New York City, Colorado, Mississippi, Minnesota, California, all over. And I'm actually very glad that these things took place, okay? Because we saw and I told you we were going to have our own protests here in America. These we actually did. Now, when we saw these protests happening here, a few days before Christmas, I didn't see a lot of people out there on the streets. I'll go to the next slide where I can show you guys the pictures of people that were actually there that started their own. Okay, and first and foremost, let me tell the listeners this. Realize that it took France at least like 5 or 6 weeks to get the amount of traction that they got. So it's going to take a little bit longer over here in America, where people are a little bit pacified, domesticated, and not really engaged. It's going to take word of mouth and online coordination from pages like our own and Yellow Vest America to help get this stuff out there. You see, I said this the day that it happened, mainstream media does not report on things unless it's invested in it. It didn't report on the Yellow Vest protests because it's not invested in it. We are invested in the Yellow Vest protests. As conscious truth seekers, as individuals who are wanting change, who are aware of all the things that are happening, of globalism, we're invested in this. We want to see change. You see? So that's why you have people stepping out from behind the phone screen to do just that, to get out there, to spread the message. You see? This is where influencers play a direct role. We need all of you guys to spread the word about future marches. This is not something that the mainstream media is going to back, and if they do, watch out, because then it means it's been controlled. You've heard me ask, since we've caught wind of what the yellow vest protests were about, you've heard me ask, what are we protesting? Is it surveillance capitalism? Is it GMOs? Is it vaccines? Is it corrupt governments or corruption within our government? What exactly are the yellow vests in America protesting? Is it the drone? Is it the Fed? You see? Like the Federal Reserve. What are we protesting here? There's not a lot of unity here. And that can cause chaos. That can easily be taken over. So I'm invested in this. I want to see things actually happen as far as the yellow vest protests here in America. I think that it's important because you have this rallying cry, right? You have people saying, hey, look, we're aware of these things, we're fed up, we want to do different. But because everybody's behind a phone and it's easier to comment instead of getting out of here, you won't see massive groups of people. You're going to see individual protesters with signs that say US dollars fund Israeli war crimes. People outside the New Jersey State House Annex. People who are carrying signs that say the people should be scared of its government. Or the people should not be scared of its government. The government should be scared of its people. United we stand. You see? Refuse, reject, resist, rebel, revolt, and rise up. You see, we live in a time frame where it's easier to talk that smack behind your phone where you're safe. Not a lot of people have been to protests. Not a lot of people have started protests. Not a lot of people understand the coordination that goes behind these types of things. That's why it is imperative that we come together to try to do better. We have to encourage any kind of action that is against this conformity, this globalism, this collectivism, or anything that depreciates the individual. So and I said this in the comments as well with people, I want to salute those people that actually went out there, because they gave all the people in those comments the ability to comment by having a post and pictures and things that they did. This is why we have to do these things. We have to encourage one another to make better choices so that we can create this future, because the future that they want is one of automation that is anti-human. It is meant to depreciate us. Now, as we're ending the year and the government shutdown is coming around, to switch topics real quick, the government shutdown is happening. Don't threaten me with a good time. Go ahead, shut down. But now we have Donald Trump saying that the border, or the shutdown will continue unless we get funding for the wall. And now articles are coming out about how, well, you know, food stamps are going to dry up sometime in January, so if we don't get January or February, if we don't get this stuff figured out, people aren't going to get their food stamps. And that could cause riots, food riots. But I'm going to play for you guys a quick clip of where Donald Trump is talking about how he wants funding for his border wall where the government shutdown will continue.
Yesterday I gave out 115 miles worth of wall, 115 miles in Texas. And it's going to be built, hopefully rapidly. I'm going there at the end of January for the start of construction. That's a big stretch, because we're talking about 500 to 550 miles total. It's a 2,000-mile border, but much of it has mountains and region where you can't get across. So we're looking at between 500 and 550. So we gave out 115 yesterday, and we gave it out at a great price. So we're going to have a great wall there, and we have other sections to give out. One other thing people don't understand or know or whatever, but they might as well, is because they're not really told. We've renovated massive amounts of very good wall that was good but was in bad shape. And so you don't have to replace it, but you have to renovate it. And we've renovated a massive amount of wall. And in addition to that, and I think very, very importantly, yesterday I gave out 115 miles worth of wall.
And, you know, this is, again, you're not hearing anything about the migrants. You're not hearing anything about any of the stuff that pertains to it. The mainstream media is very, very clever when they put this type of stuff out there. And now prior to this, because I see this whole restructuring happening, right? From Trump deploying all the troops to the border, to now him pulling troops out from Syria. I see this whole restructuring, this whole reformation taking place, to where it looks like we're going to be, I don't know, it looks very interesting, to say the least. It looks like we're basically preparing for some kind of conflict, some kind of collision. You know, I'm actually very glad to see Trump try to pull out the people to pull out the soldiers from Syria. This is awesome. To withdraw troops from Afghanistan too. All of this stuff is massive, because what we're seeing is just that, the military-industrial complex kind of being put in check. But you know how these people operate. Something has to happen. They don't allow a lot of positive things to take place. And this is something I wanted to get into last week, but I think at the same time I wanted to see what happened in the aggregate. Trump orders mass troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is by Nima Harris of your Newswire. We put this up December 21st. It says Donald Trump has ordered the Pentagon to withdraw thousands of troops from Afghanistan. Officials say about 7,000 troops, or about half of the remaining U.S. military presence in the country, could go home within months. Reports say that this is the latest sign that the U.S. president's patience with America's longest war is wearing thin. The news comes a day after Trump's decision to pull American military forces out of Syria, which was swiftly followed by the abrupt resignation of Secretary Jim Mattis. RT reports that Trump has grown increasingly frustrated over the Afghan stalemate, pushing for the end of the 17-year-long U.S. campaign in the country in the past several weeks. ABC News reported, citing a U.S. official, quote, "What are we doing there? We've been there all these years," Trump reportedly told an ally at a meeting on Wednesday. Reuters reported the same day that Trump is said to have discussed the potential pullout or a considerable reduction of the U.S. force with his outgoing Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and his hawkish National Security Advisor John Bolton. The commander-in-chief, however, has not found support for his withdrawal plan, according to the ABC. Hours before deliberations have been reported by the U.S. media, Mattis handed in his resignation letter, citing differences in views with the president. While ABC News, citing a U.S. official, reported that troops might leave the war-torn country, quote, in the coming weeks, NBC News, citing two other defense officials, said no concrete decision has been made yet, and that the Pentagon is likely to present its report, quote, shortly after the new year. The reports come at a time when part of the American public and even Trump's allies in the Republican Party have incensed over his decision to withdraw some 2,000 American troops from Syria after declaring victory over Islamic State. So basically what they're saying is they don't want this to happen. Our country is a war country. We love going over to other places and establishing freedom, establishing democracy, dropping those freedom nukes. And so to the military-industrial complex, as we see ramping up, that's bad business for them. You also have to think, I forget which president it was, but they said any of the powers that are used abroad, any of the powers, the military might that we have that's used abroad, it's only a matter of time until it comes home. And I think personally that's where I'm at with a lot of this type of stuff. When I see these developments happening, I see all of that power, that military might, coming right back here. And since Trump's presidency, you guys have heard me talk about how close he is to the military-industrial complex and how authoritarian he is. Okay, we keep talking about things such as not mind control, martial law, civil unrest, and everything else that comes with that. This is why we're talking about this on the heels of the Yellow Vest protests. People are already in a state of discontent. They are legitimately looking for a reason to go. And at the same time, when that does happen, it will be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. I think that's why, again, we have the troops. That's why we have the cops. That's why we see ICE, getting more power as well. There's a lot of different factors that we have to look at here in America. Because, again, these people, and everybody keeps saying that Trump's not part of the elite. Man, you have to understand they're working a different game these days. These people are publicly telling you, hey, look, Bill Gates is going to be involved in chemtrails or stratospheric aerosol injection. Hey, look, we can remote mind control dogs. hey, look, Congressman Mark Green is telling you that, yeah, vaccines may cause autism. We're not looking at how this is a new era. This is the New World Order. So everything has changed. When this stuff is in the news, that's even bigger news because it's now been normalized. They're admitting that these things are happening. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy stuff. And so to get back to Trump, some more of the domestic reformations that I see happening here in America, and I think the Free Thought Project summarized this beautifully by saying that Trump supporters were silent as the president was more, as Donald Trump was more successful at attacking the Second Amendment than Obama. And I laugh because, you know, you hear you hear a lot of people say, or at least the hardcore Trump supporters who are stuck with this, you know, they come up with excuses saying, oh, we didn't need bump stocks anyway. Oh, this isn't important. Oh, you know, my 4D chess. No, any gun law is an infringement upon the Second Amendment. Okay. Yeah, there are other ways to do bump stock. Yeah, there's other kinds of ways to fire. I get that. They will whittle away. First, they'll take the bump stock. You know, then they'll take the trigger. That's what they're doing in New Jersey, right? They're doing door-to-door gun magazine confiscations. You see how they're literally going to whittle away at every little piece they can until you're unable to defend yourself. Because, well, a slave with a gun is a rebel or a dissenter or somebody that can protect themselves and their way of life. They don't want that. They want your way of life in their system. You can't. That's why, again, self-sustaining, off-the-grid farmers, individuals who don't abide by this system are considered a threat because everybody has to be in the system. You see, this is why we have to understand that we have an innate right to defending ourselves. But because, you know, again, it was Donald Trump that announced the Space Force, and it's Donald Trump that's coming after your bump stock ban, people don't listen. People legitimately don't listen. I'm going to read a little bit of this article, and then we're going to get into our next one that just talks about modern-day policing in Rio de Janeiro, just kind of where things are and where I see things heading if we don't check this kind of power, because that's what they're trying to seize. But let me get into this article. It's from the Free Thought Project. We put this up December 20th. It says, Trump supporters silent as president more successful at attacking the Second Amendment than Obama. Just as some gun rights groups flip-flop on protecting the right to keep and bear arms from federal encroachment, so has Republican President Donald Trump. Not only has he ramped up federal gun control enforcement, but he has unilaterally implemented new federal gun control in the form of a bump stock ban. As we pointed out before, the effectiveness of this policy is moot. The feds have no constitutional authority to restrict firearms. It is important to keep in mind that this isn't merely something occurring under Trump's watch, but out of his control. The president actively pursued an unconstitutional firearm restriction through an unconstitutional method via agency rulemaking. If the Constitution did not delegate authority to the Congress or the president to enact such a rule, and the Second Amendment makes that adamantly clear, then obviously a bureaucracy has no such power either. Before Trump supporters turn a blind eye to this or rationalize his actions, they should honestly ask themselves, how would they respond if Obama tried to do the same thing? Oh wait, he essentially did. In 2015, President Obama directed the ATF to pursue a possible ban of the M855 cartridge. To do so, they released a proposed agency rule which defined or redefined the M855 green tip ammunitions as a armor-piercing to qualify it for federal prohibition under the 1968 Gun Control Act. Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there, because then, you know, it's a fantastic article filled with a lot of information. Definitely go check it out. What we're talking about is just that. The politics, the back and forth, the devil in the details of how they want your guns. You know, from what we've seen happen out there in Parkland, what we even saw happen with the Las Vegas shooting. We still don't know what entirely happened. We see them coming up with ways to try to get our guns, to have us disenfranchised, to disarm us. What's even crazier We don't have the time to go into this, but if people are curious, look into things like the UN Small Arms Treaty. This is again where we have the feds, or where we have a global government telling us, hey, look, you're going to abide by this. No more small arms. You're not allowed to trade. You're not allowed to do these types of things. This is why they have everything registered. I wonder if the yellow vests will protest this, the over-encroaching police state that we see being built. Now, the end goal of this police state is to do what we're about to talk about in this next article in relation to Rio de Janeiro. License to kill policing to get trial run in Rio de Janeiro. We put this up December 21st or 24th. It's from Drudge Report feed. And before I get into this, because we have an international audience, we had people commenting who had been to Rio, who live in Rio, who say if people from America came down there, you would be begging the police to kill people. You would be begging them to shoot at the individuals. Apparently crime is very bad in Rio, and it's to a point now to where, you know, this is the response. So how long do you think it'll be until they get the license to kill here in America? Because they're already killing people. Like they already have killer cops. They already have death squads. But whenever it becomes public like this, that's whenever you start to again see the degradation of society to where life has no meaning. That's why this is a very, very slippery slope, and why we're talking about it in this particular section. Your life has intrinsic value, and whenever authority deems it as being less valuable, that's when we have an issue. That's when we need to take a step back and actually ask what is happening. But let me get into this article right here. It's from the Drudge Report feed. It says teams of marksmen next year will patrol swaths of Rio de Janeiro with high-powered weapons and a license to kill, said a security advisor to Governor-elect Wilson Witzel. As many as 120 sharpshooters will accompany police incursions into the slums of Brazil's postcard city to exterminate gun-toting criminals, according to Flavio Paca, a longtime associate of Witzel, who the governor-elect's press office said will join the administration. The shooters will work in pairs, one to pull the trigger, one to monitor their conditions and videotape the deaths. Quote, the protocol will be to immediately neutralize, slaughter anyone who has a rifle. Witzel, a federal judge and former Brazilian Marine, told reporters in Brasilia on December 12th, quote, whoever has a rifle isn't worried about other people's lives. They're ready to eliminate anyone who crosses their path. This is a grave problem, not just in Rio de Janeiro, but also in other states. Rio has long exemplified Brazil's charm and its chaos, and what happens there echoes at home and abroad. Like President-elect Jair Bolsonaro, Witzel cruised to victory in October, promising a brutal crackdown on criminals who make daily life a harrowing ordeal. Rio will be a proving ground for Bolsonaro's theory or philosophy of maximum force, and whether law enforcement devolves into a storm of extrajudicial killings. Witzel declined Bloomberg's interview request and declined to comment on the sharpshooter plan Paca described. Now, the reason I want to cover this is because in the next section, we're going to talk about how in China they're creating like a point-based system for the police officers that are not killing or not, arresting Christians. So in China, they're creating a point-based system. In Brazil, they're saying, look, we're just going to kill you because crime's that bad. We're going to videotape it too. On Christmas Day, here in America, the cops just decided to clean out like a homeless camp. So what, again, this is why we talk about, man's law, natural law, and all these other things. What we're seeing happen right now is just an overall depreciation for life, the gradual degradation of society, to where authoritarian powers are rising and the power of the individual is declining. They are trying to put us in a state of subservience, and they're not trying to give us anything to fight back. And that's why it's important that we stand up for the individual, for your right to defend yourself, as well as the economic and the socioeconomic situation which created this. But if people are so drugged out enticed by themselves, how can we really get out of that? You see, so the domestic, to summarize this section, to talk about domestic reformations, we see a small percentage of people conscious, doing their hardest to try to reform things, while everybody else sits and waits. You see, this is dangerous. And while waiting, while we have these people who are for the community, people who are for the individual, people who are for people, right? You have this system that is trying to systematically figure out ways to extract whatever remaining power we have. So while we're going through this whole socioeconomic reformation, right, the domestic reformations, it's important to look at what we're bringing in and what we're kicking out. These are the harder things that I think a lot of people don't take the time to think about. But what's going to happen is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back talking about competitive world powers. Putin has announced hypersonic weaponry, and I talked about this in the previous episode about China and Russia teaming up for ionospheric manipulation. But we're going to get into that and more on the other side. Christian Chinese are being persecuted as they rebel against Xi Jinping, and so much more. There's a lot of things happening, and we're going to be right there with you, good people, so we can help figure it out and get to the other side. But speaking of the other side, we'll be right back right after this. Those are the sound effects. I'm trying to make it seem like it's like a spaceship. Touching the ground. Touchdown, because we are back. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to this edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer. In that segment we just got done doing was domestic reformations. We're going to be talking about Russia, China, competitive world powers, and where we see America in relation to it. You know, and I'm going to say this real quick. I think Russia is clearly Russia is the scapegoat for the immense threat that China is, period. You know, this whole anti-American thing we got going on, very dangerous. That's all I'm saying. I don't really post about it a lot, but Russia is most certainly preparing for conflict. China is going on the offensive now that they have been given the keys. Now that they have been given Apple. There's a lot of things that are going on the geopolitical scale, and to have people here within our own country who first off aren't contributing anything, and then secondly hate it here. It's like, man, this is bad. And you got to think too, when these people do take over, those are going to be the first ones to go. These aren't loyal people. These aren't people you trust. These are backstabbing manipulators. These aren't people who are loyal to a cause. These are people who are loyal to the dollar, who aren't loyal to ideas. We'll get into this too. Religion versus the state, what we see happening in China. We've talked about that time and time again, how they're burning churches, burning crosses, ripping out coffins from the ground, arresting churchgoers, preachers, and all this stuff. There is no other religion but the state in China. And so we're seeing that whole contest happen. But how that ties into just that, how we have to stand for something here. We have to believe in our country, believe in ourselves, believe in our future. We have to actually push forward something. Otherwise, you know, other people are going to profiteer and capitalize off of our ignorance and our weakness, man. You know. And personally, I feel like a lot of what we're seeing happen, to a degree too, is just that a lot of history repeating itself. What's happening here in America, I feel like, to a degree, and I'm just gonna say this bluntly, because we talked about the socioeconomic collapse, or the economic collapse that's being hinted at by experts and elites and financial analysts. What I feel like is happening here in America is we're seeing the kind of last gasp of capitalism, and this is why we have this extraordinary exuberance of patriotism in America right now, is because, and I said this earlier this week prior to this episode, I just had the thought, and I was talking with somebody about it. We're only going to be able to be American for as long as we can, because you see them destroying this. You see them destroying this thing over here. This country, this identity, this way of life, this culture. You see this. You know, it's very rare that I'll see a Chinese woman in a bikini. That's all I'm saying. But they like to come over here and wear the bikinis. I'll tell you that. You know, and I wish I could say it's very rare that I would see like a Russian woman in a bikini, but you know, those snow bunnies, man, they like shooting those AKs out there in the snow in the bikinis. That's amazing. My point is this: I appreciate everything out there. I appreciate America for all of its pros and cons. I appreciate China for all of its pros and cons, the same way I appreciate Russia for all of its pros and cons. But what's happening right now, and we've talked about it through the entirety of this year, is we are going through a deconstruction process. They are breaking us down. And in the process of breaking us down, they're making us weak. I don't have the facts right here, but I could, you know, start saving them. You know, we're not up to par. We don't have enough people in the military. That's why they're having to switch towards automation as far as the Air Force goes, because not a lot of people are making it to fighter pilots, and at the same time, technology is advancing, so people can't really sustain the G-forces that the planes create. I digress. The point is this: we're seeing this thing happen, and you can even make an argument to that that people are choosing peace instead of war. We're seeing so much change that it's important for us to remember the values that got us to where we were in the first place. And with that being said, I think this is a good place for me to start talking about what we're going to be discussing in this episode. Like I said, fighter pilots not being able to withstand the G-forces of the planes because they're becoming so advanced, right? Well, check this out. Putin has announced advanced hypersonic weapons, Russian military plans for a base in the Caribbean, and warns about nuclear war and how it should not be underestimated. Now, this is again why you guys hear me always cautiously approach anything that has to do with the war topic, because I'm anti-war, I'm anti-sending people off to die, I'm anti-nuclear war, because then we have like a fallout situation where people have to go into vaults, and it becomes a whole dystopia. I think the whole point of us to do all of this is to try to negate war, save as many lives, win as many souls as possible, to create that better tomorrow. But let me get into this article. This is by Aaron Kessel of Activist Post. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin denied the U.S. claim that Russia has developed a new cruise missile in violation of 1987 intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, which banned land-based nuclear missiles in Europe during the Cold War. Putin added that Russia has advanced hypersonic weapons, surpassing the banned weapons by the treaty, and wouldn't need new missiles. Associated Press reported, quote, "No one has hypersonic weapons yet, but we have it," he said. The U.S. and NATO warned earlier this month it would suspend its obligations under the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. I'm going to just say the INF from here on out. In 60 days, if Russia did not return to full compliance. The U.S. claims the 9M729 cruise missile breaches the INF treaty, Activist Post reported. This comes after Russia ran a drill flying two of its nuclear-capable strategic Tu-160 bombers over the Caribbean Sea during a 10-hour training mission, WSB-TV reported. It's also further worth noting that Putin recently stated that the threat of nuclear war should not be underestimated, as tensions have risen between NATO countries and Russia within the past few months. Putin added that the U.S. withdrawal from the treaty could spur, quote, global catastrophe, and that he hopes, quote, common sense will prevail. Russia appears to be making preparations for potential war. In April earlier this year, a Russian state-owned television station warned that some Americans are preparing for a coming war with Moscow, explaining to the country's residents how to stock their bunkers with water and basic necessities in case war breaks out. I remember reporting on that, oddly enough. And I want to say this too real quick. There's information coming out about how Washington, how there's people in Washington funding far-right neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. So there's our way of getting involved in Russia. Oh man, like this stuff is actually pretty crazy too. And there's an article coming out. I haven't got around to posting it. There's an article talking about how in how the White Helmets, how they're staging false flags, chemical attacks, organ harvesting, NATO, like how they're involved in it. Like there's a lot of information coming out on, again, just how sketchy we are with things, and people are not standing for it. The Russians and the Chinese are calling us out. Again, we didn't really hear anything about what happened with ISIS after Russia and America decided to work together in Syria. Some people have even said, well, of course there can be no terrorists because you're not supplying them with the funding. Well, maybe that's where the funding is going now, is to arming the far-right neo-Nazis in Ukraine. You see, to create the destabilization. There's a whole lot of stuff happening on the geopolitical scale. People are being, we haven't gotten around to talking about it, kind of a sidetrack, but they moved nuclear bombers into Venezuela's water. Russia did. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro, he's talking about how people here in the U.S. are trying to assassinate him. So all I'm really trying to say is that we can definitely see the evidence of war taking place, and I find it very, very disturbing. Very, very disturbing. But I'm gonna get into this, and then we'll move on to our next topic. But continuing on, it says this is visibly seen by Russia. Russia's suggesting that it will build a base in the Caribbean and build it up its existing Arctic strongholds. Quote, "We'll finish building infrastructure in 2019 to accommodate air defense radar units and aviation guidance points of the Shrindi and Wrangel Islands on Cape Schmidt." In the Russian Arctic, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said, according to France 24. The report noted that NATO held its biggest military exercise since the end of the Cold War near Russia's Arctic base with Norway earlier this year. So we're some people are saying we're starting to see more of another Cuban Missile Crisis. And again, these are the war drums. This is the time frame we're in. So whenever you have CNN and all these other people talking about Russiagate, 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 all I can really hope is that we're colluding to not kill millions of people. Good Lord. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we're trying to think about this, because once we kick this stuff off, there's no going back. You see. And so that's very dangerous. And so while we have Putin talking about developing hypersonic weaponry, right? Prior to that, we heard about how China and Russia were working together at I think it's the Xingzhou facility. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll get into this. China and Russia working together on ionospheric manipulation, because that's where the next battle is. That's where the next fight is. That's where the next domain is. Space. Our ionosphere, just above the planet. This is what I mean by competitive world powers. I talked about it, like I said before, in our previous episode, where we had China and Russia, like I said, teaming up for the ionospheric manipulation, and then a few days later, we had Donald Trump literally ordering the Pentagon to create the U.S. Space Command. And I played you guys the video, the video of from what is it? It's like National Geographic, where they're talking to you about HARP and things like that, and the ionospheric manipulation, because this is something that's been going on for a while. If you guys didn't click in the description bar, you probably did not see the weather patterns list that we put in there. This stuff is important, because what we're again beginning to talk about is how they first create the problem, then come through with the solution. A lot of these things are crazy like that. I don't understand the logic, but again, this just talks about where things are at. You don't think about the Space Force being created because it was Donald Trump talking about the Space Force. You see. You're not caring about the banning of bump stocks because it was Trump that banned the bump stocks. You see the cognitive dissonance that's going on here? Like it's like the wizardry behind ignorance and denial that they're manipulating the public into. You see? That's why it's important that we always approach everything with caution. We should not just be jumping straight in. So many problems can come from that. But let me get into this just for the sake of getting everything kind of on the record. Again, ionospheric manipulation, Donald Trump creating the Space Force. We're moving forward into the future. Part of me thinks that might be why he removed some people from Syria, is so that they would have some people to send off into space for everything that we see happening here, because we're again seeing a lot of things take place. You got to think 2021 is right around the corner, and then 2030 is 12 years away from now. This gives them ample amount of time to create everything they need. They're trying to create this breakaway civilization if they haven't already. This is why you see a lot of people today engaging in this kind of degradative behavior, because their thought process is, well, how about we take the best and the brightest, we'll create our own world, our own society, our own world order, and then we'll wait for everybody else to dissipate, to die off. So it's crazy, all the stuff that we see happening here, but that's why I guess I'm approaching all of it. That's why I'm looking at all of it, because it's important. You know, I don't want us to go to war. I don't want to be a part of I guess I don't want to do a wartime podcast, man. I don't want to talk about the wars and the deaths of thousands. It's crazy. It's crazy. But to continue on, this is something that I wanted to get into in the previous episode, but I did not have time I didn't have time to, is how Christians were standing in the way of China's Xi Jinping's totalitarian rule. And we've talked about this on the show a number of times. Like I said before, how there is no religion but the state in China. How is this a competitive world power? Well, if you have Russia and China teaming up, because we're involved in God knows what over here, this allows for these people to create the perfect citizen. That's why you see China creating the social credit score system, Canada being involved, Venezuela being involved. You see all these different tendrils of the New World Order kind of coming out. Religion allows for people to have control of themselves, have discipline over themselves, and to fight back against listening to state-run TV, government-run propaganda, and all this other stuff that invades your mind. What I see happening in China is truly just that, rebellion. Really. Because, and I've said this before too, with people on the show and privately, that spirituality is the highest form of revolution, or the highest form of rebellion. If you are so secure and so strong in your faith, so disciplined that you will not be shaken, that's who really rules you. That's real power. And that's why Xi has to do everything he's doing to show that the government has more power than God. There it is, the blasphemy. You see, because, and people have probably heard me talk about this time and time again, the devil has to masquerade as an angel of light. The devil wants to rule this world. You see, the devil controls all of this stuff. That's what government means, mind control. They're trying to control you. You can't control what is natural. And I'll say this and I'll play the clip for you guys. I forget the scripture or the verse that it is where Job talks about the devil going to and fro. It's going to and fro, up and down, up and within the earth. And these are directional quotes within the verse that says, look, Satan's going to the highest of highs and to the lowest of lows. He's going to the far east and the far west to check on what, though? God asks Satan, he says, where have you been? Satan says to God, or Lucifer says to God, he says, I have been going to and fro, up and in, within the earth. So something is happening here that has so much power and so much energy, so much importance, that it's got the devil going back and forth out of the earth, or above the earth and within the earth, to check on the status. Where would, if there were some kind of unholy darkness or darkness army, where would it be? Within the realms that people can't get to. Antarctica, the depths, the oceans, you name it. Now, prior to President Xi Jinping and his latest attack on Christians and the Bible, prior to him doing this, remember he got rid of George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Why? Because he used them as a blueprint. This is why I tell you that there will be no other religion but the state in China. They want to replace God. They want to replace religion, replace Christianity with government. They don't want you listening to your instincts, listening to your gut, listening to your second brain. They don't want you meditating. They don't want you praying. They don't want you reaching out to a higher spirit or higher energy. They don't want you looking within yourself saying, you know what, I could change. No, they want you being the perfect citizen as I guess as molded by the operating parameters of the social credit score system. Like I said, I don't think I have the proper way to explain to people how dangerous this is whenever they're trying to eliminate religion. This is why, as I get it, everybody has their own relationship with religion, Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, all of this. I get it. I still believe that people should be able to practice their faith unhindered. You guys heard me talk about it in the previous episode, the concept of the freedom of religion and how this was put in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights by Freemasons, by triple agent Freemasons that were still trying to practice the occultism. I digress on that. My point is, you should be able to practice and seek God's face unabated, unhindered. You should be able to pursue that inner peace, that spiritual strength, without the government getting involved. Prior to, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this is because these are people who are standing for individuality and freedom and religion in a whole nother in an authoritarian time, and it's only a matter of time until we come here, or until it comes here. You see, they literally had, what was it? It's like communist approved or government approved preachers, and then even on top of that, they would put people, security officers, they would put people inside of the church or Communist Party members inside of the church to make sure that the preacher was saying stuff that was along the Communist Party lines. Remember too, it was Pope Francis that was saying, okay, we're going to give you guys your government approved bishops. Like, it's crazy what is going on with religion, what's going on in China, and everything else. And I'm going to play for you guys this clip from CBN News where they talk about that, the Chinese Christian the Chinese Christian persecution that's taking place. And this is important because, again, you should be allowed to practice whatever you feel. It's not being, you're not being offensive, you're not being militant or aggressive or any of these types of things. It's just the simple fact that you're not worshiping the state, that you're not worshiping China's President Xi Jinping as God. And the reason why this is so dangerous is because look at what's going on in North Korea. Look at how these people are just now coming out of their mind control. Look at South Korea. Look at Seoul. Look at everything that's going on there. I want to go there. I don't want to go to North Korea because these people are too loyal to the state to where they have lost their identity. That's what I think I was trying to get across to you guys in the first segment. If we keep giving our power over to this state, we become slaves. And it starts with the chipping away of the bump stock ban, chipping away at the ability to even own a gun, to question what goes inside of your body. I digress. Let me play for you guys this clip of Chinese Christians against China's President Xi Jinping.
This past Sunday, members of Early Rain Covenant Church were blocked from entering their worship building. With their leaders detained and facing jail, churchgoers decided to pray and worship outside. On December 9th, authorities in the city of Chengdu arrested prominent Christian pastor Wang Yi, along with his wife and 100 members of Early Rain Covenant Church. Authorities shut down the church and charged Pastor Wang with inciting subversion of state power. He and his wife could face up to 15 years in prison if convicted. Early Rain, like scores of other congregations, is outside government control as part of China's burgeoning so-called underground or house church movement. Appearing on CBN News' World Beat, Todd Middleton of Voice of the Martyrs says this movement has touched every corner of China.
And that's the exciting thing is all across China, there are house churches, there are what they call family churches. And the reason the communist government is so worried is because there are far more Christians in China than there are members of the Communist Party.
Nettleton says Beijing is waging a brutal and widespread crackdown to stop the growth of these unregistered churches.
This crackdown, I think, is a direct response to the fear of the Communist Party leaders who see the church growing way faster than the party is.
Mr. Yang, has China declared war on Christianity?
Yes.
Fang Gong, a leading expert on religion in China, says what started several years ago as a small government campaign against unregistered churches has turned into all-out war.
The campaign was first experimented in Zhejiang province in 2014 to 2016. Now it has become a nationwide campaign.
A campaign where authorities routinely target houses of worship, destroy crosses, burn Bibles, and arrest pastors. Mr. Feng Gong, who once predicted that China could become the world's largest Christian nation, says the government, headed by Xi Jinping, views Christianity as a threat to the party's long-term political aspirations.
Christians are the remaining NGOs in the shrinking civil society in China. And under Xi Jinping, the Chinese Communist Party is really trying to establish a totalitarian rule of Chinese society. And Christians are standing in the way of totalitarianism. So that's why they became a target.
Pictures shared on Early Rain's Facebook page claim to show that police physically abused some of those arrested after they were taken into custody. Foreseeing this possible arrest, Pastor Wang wrote a letter titled My Declaration of Faithful Disobedience, with instructions that it should be published if he went missing for more than 48 hours. In it, Wang vowed to use non-violent methods to stand against Chinese laws he believed were against the Bible and God. My Savior Christ also requires me to joyfully bear all costs for disobeying wicked laws, Wang wrote. I am filled with anger and disgust at the persecution of the church by this communist regime, at the wickedness of their depriving people of the freedoms of religion and of conscience. Wang is no stranger to authorities. He was once one of China's most prominent civil rights lawyers and intellectuals. In 2005, he had an encounter with Jesus Christ and decided to convert to Christianity. He gave up his law career to pursue his calling as a pastor and started Early Rain in China's Sichuan province. His sermons, many of them widely circulated on social media, soon made him a rising star and an important player in the Christian revival that was sweeping China. All that has come to a screeching halt with his arrest and the closure of the church. Still, members of his congregation vowed to keep meeting despite the risk of arrest. George Thomas, CBN News.
Thank you, George. A whole lot to talk about there. Underground street churches, house churches, subversion of the state power, more Christians than communists, faithful disobedience, a whole lot of stuff to talk about, man. Because it's important. You see, they want us to be automatons of this crazy technocracy. As you've heard me say before, only transhumans will enter the technocracy. Religion puts an end to that. Because science is our new God. Science is our new religion. And trust me, you know, we're not even going to get into the science-religion discussion because it's a great discussion. But my point is this. What we're seeing is just that. We have to come up with non-violent means to expose how these people, the state, how they are violent themselves. As I've talked about, you know, they will go out there and kidnap people. They'll beat them after they're in custody. They'll burn the church. And all of this is to show how much power the state has. You see, whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't extend to simply Christianity. Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, Hindu practices, none of it. It's all of it, because these are people taking the time to try to figure out how to get in touch with the divine. And because, yeah, people have a little bit of power here, they think that they're supposed to exude it. That's, again, more of that blasphemy, where you think that you are supposed to exalt yourself above creation and above the Creator. This is where we're going. This is why it is important, like I said, for people to pay attention to this type of stuff. I'm curious to see what will continue to happen. Faithful disobedience and non-violent means as ways of getting your point across, that sounds like something Martin Luther King did. And look at the effects that it's having. People should be able to practice their beliefs as long as it does not offend people. And the reason I say that is because we're going to be talking about occultists and witches and all this other stuff on the other side. Very, very interesting days we're moving into. And if you ask me, rebellion to tyranny is staying committed to God, man. You know, these people want to control things. You can't control chaos. This is why their whole secret little logo or secret little tagline thing is Novus Orem Seclorum. Oh no, that's the New World Order. What's the other Latin phrase? Ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. You see, but let me get into this article right here. This is from Sign of the Times. From End Times Headlines by Ricky Scaparo. We put this up December 21st, and this is in relation to the early rain church and the Christians within China. China is instituting a point-based system for arresting Christians. Police are ordered to make arrests or be fired. China's communist government has been threatening to fire police officers who failed to meet a quota for arresting Christians, according to one officer. The officer from the city of Dalian, who wasn't named, said the police station where he works received a quarterly performance assessment plan in September that lists the number of believers officers need to detain, according to his interview that was detailed in the religious liberty magazine Bitter Winter. Before I continue on, I just want to say, you know, they are detaining Christians and Muslims within China and putting them in re-education camps. They are detaining Christians and Muslims in China and putting them in re-education camps so they can be part of the Communist Party. They put you in there, they recite the Communist the Communist song, until you are literally brainwashed into thinking that the Communist state is now God. To thinking that Xi Jinping is your savior. That you are no individual, that there is no God, there is no earth, there is nothing else outside of the state. I just want to say that. Continuing on, quote, the assessment is based on a 100-point evaluation system which specific scores assigned for each arrested believer depending on his or her faith. The highest scores are given to the most persecuted religious movements such as Falun Gong or the Church of Almighty God, the article revealed. Quote, for example, if a police station makes a breakthrough in a case against Falun Gong that is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Public Security, it scores 20 points. If the Provincial Public Security Bureau manages the case, the score is lower. It's 10 points. An arrested regional leader of the Church of Almighty God will add to the station's assessment basket 20 points, and a local church leader, half of it. If the quotas are not met, the station chief is at risk of being fired, the source revealed. To meet the quotas, officers resort to trading and buying names of arrested Christians off of each other. Wow, that's crazy. I'm going to say that one more time. To meet the quotas, officers resort to trading and buying names of arrested Christians off of each other. The police officer said that he himself does not want to arrest innocent believers, but fears the consequences supervisors will have for him. Christians and Muslims and other minorities have faced an increased crackdown by the administration of President Xi Jinping this year, with churches demolished on several occasions, while pastors and entire congregations have been arrested. The arrests of hundreds of believers at Early Rain Covenant Church in Chengdu made international news this month. Police initially arrested some 100 Christians during a raid on the prominent underground church, while another 60 members were detained in another incident last week. And I know that doesn't at first sight it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but you've got to understand this is now part of the system. The same way police officers have to arrest a certain amount of people at the start of the month, middle of the month, or the end of the month. We're now seeing it specified with Christians, Muslims, minority groups in China. So you literally have, like, what other kind of definition of fascism, authoritarian fascism is that? You have China saying, look, go out and go arrest people that believe anything other than what I tell them to. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's past fake. Like, this is what goes past fake news. This is after they're done. This is what happens if we continually let these people have that much power over us. Very, very dangerous stuff. And clearly, you know, we'll keep an eye on this as things develop. But to continue on, to again talk about the competitive world powers, what we see happening in China, what we see happening across the globe, and how people are basically trying to get a handle on their citizens. Check this out. I think this is kind of wild, but Chinese scientists are searching for the human soul via a state-of-the-art brain scanner. This is by John Lockett of Technocracy News. We put this up December 20th, and the reason I want to go into this is, well, to put it bluntly to you guys, remember how I was talking about Desmond the drag kid, and then in China, you know, you have this guy, I forget his name at the moment, Chinese scientist comes out, makes world news talking about designer babies. So you have America making drag kids, and then you have China developing genetically modified babies or genetically engineered babies, editing the embryo. What we see happening in China is, again, they are preparing. I've talked about the cloning things that are going on in China as well as in North Korea. And now we have them searching for the human soul. I think that's very, very crazy. Very, very strange. Some people have said that the seat of the soul is the pineal gland. And if this is just public common knowledge to everybody, I'm very curious as to what the Chinese have found out. But getting into this article, it says technocrat scientists believe that humans are just like any other animal, which are a product of random evolution. Therefore, they fully expect to be able to use science to find the human soul. As atheists, they do not believe man was created by God with body, soul, and spirit. Chinese scientists are developing a 100 million pound state-of-the-art brain scanner to try and find the human soul. They will use powerful magnetic forces to observe the structure and activities of every neuron in a living brain. The aim is to build the world's most powerful MRI device, which one day may be able to help answer one of life's big questions. The mystical soul, according to many religious, philosophical, and mythological traditions, is the true essence of a living being. Simply stated, it is said to be part of a person that is not physical and lives on long after the body experiences death. The scanner, quote, will revolutionize brain studies, said a senior scientist working on the top-secret project in Shenzhen. The total budget for the state-backed facility will even exceed that of FAST, the world's largest telescope in Pingtan. Quote, it will show us a different world with phenomena unseen before, maybe even the soul, one scientist told the SCEMP. Quote, we may, for the first time, capture full pictures of the human consciousness or even essence of life itself, said another physicist. Quote, then we can define them and explain how they work in precise physical terms, just like Newton and Einstein defined and explained the universe. The Shenzhen Institute of Advanced Technology revealed the first phase of the project and has been given the green light. So we have these communists now looking for the human soul. Which begs the question, is consciousness local or is it external? Oh man, that's a good question. Is consciousness within your body, or is your consciousness just animating it externally? Whole lot of crazy things going on. So while we see Putin working on hypersonic, advanced hypersonic weaponry, we see the Chinese cutting down on Christianity, cutting down on religion, and saying, look, we need to develop more technology so we can figure out what makes them tick. Realize all year here in America we have talked about how they have the frequencies, the 5G frequencies, the ELF, the electromagnetic frequencies, all the things that they need to manipulate the mind. This is the new warfare, if you ask me. It's the war on consciousness, it's the war on the individual. It's how can they control billions of people. I find that very scary. So let me just say that real quick. Let me just wrap this up, because this plays into what we're going to be talking about here in the next section. So while we see President Xi Jinping of China cracking down on religion, cracking down on people's beliefs, and this might be a crazy theory as well, could they be taking some of those detained Christians to that Shenzhen facility to study what makes them tick, what part of their brain lights up whenever they're praying? These studies have been conducted here in America. The power of prayer. These studies have definitely been out there time and time again. The only thing that's different now is we see China getting involved. And we see everything that China's doing. And at the same time, we don't. Very, very crazy things, but you know what's even more crazy? We're going to take a quick break. That's right. Sorry. That's all I have for you in this section. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the elite's vampirism. This thing called Ambrosia. I call it legal vampirism. It's where, you have the elites trying to transfuse younger people's bloods into them. Blood facials. Kim Kardashian does this. So does Angelina Jolie. We're also going to talk about the North Carolina State University creating their own satanic students club, as well as the legalization of cannabis. That's right. All kinds of other things and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction on Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this. My friends, I'm here to talk to you about, that's right, CBD oil. CBD oil can reduce the risk of relapse among alcohol and cocaine addicts, and they're trying to flood us with both. According to a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, CBD was proven to have these benefits: relieving pain and inflammation, having antipsychotic effects, reducing anxiety, helping to fight cancer, relieving nausea, treating seizures, lowering incidences of diabetes, and also promoting cardiovascular health. Realize that in 2014, Purdue Pharma received FDA approval for an opioid drug that claimed to help curb the opioid addiction. This will actually help you curb your usage of opioids as well as your reliance upon them. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out. Santa is a Psychedelic Mushroom by Matthew Salton.
So, it's the holidays. And I'm thinking about mushrooms. Psychedelic mushrooms. The Amanita muscaria to be exact. Most commonly associated with fairies, gnomes, Alice in Wonderland, and Mario. So what does this magical mushroom have to do with Christmas?
It's surprising that it's taken so long for the popular imagination to encompass who Santa Claus is.
That's Carl Ruck, a scholar known for his work on the influential role hallucinogenic plants have played in mythology and religion. And he believes this mushroom may be one of the reasons we have flying reindeer and an all-knowing man who flies around the globe every winter. Maybe there's another story worth telling this season. One about a psychedelic mushroom-eating shaman from the Arctic.
At least part of the Santa Claus image comes from Lapland.
And that's Lawrence Millman, writer and mycologist. He says the indigenous people of Lapland, known as the Sami, allegedly performed healing rituals led by shamans who used the hallucinogenic mushroom, the Amanita muscaria. So imagine it's winter, we're near the North Pole, and a shaman is coming to your house.
Long ago, the Sami people believed that the shaman who ate an Amanita muscaria ended up looking like an Amanita muscaria. And he came on a reindeer-drawn sled.
So he had reindeer, and he's looking like
a big fat person with red splotches in the dead of winter.
And instead of entering through the snow-blocked doorway, the shaman would drop down the chimney.
What they brought were not physical gifts, but usually healing and problem solving, which would be a kind of gift. And they were rewarded with lots of food.
Offerings of food? Kind of like milk and cookies? Delicious.
And reindeer have a great love for mushrooms, and especially the males like Amanita muscaria. And one of the effects, I don't know if you've had Amanita muscaria, have you?
No, I haven't.
Not that I'm recommending it, mind you. One of the effects makes you feel like you're flying. And one can imagine that that's how reindeer feel as well.
So if we're imagining ourselves in a tent right now, there's a fire going, the shaman is in front of us, and the shaman
would eat the mushroom, go into a trance. Although they would be sitting there beating the drum in the tent, they would be saying, and I'm going down to the underworld and I'm getting advice from so-and-so.
So they would get advice from another realm and bring it back to the people, and
that would be the gift, as it were, of Santa Claus, i.e. the person who took the mushroom and ended up looking like the mushroom. This all becomes a kind of melange. You can't really interpret it with scientific objectiveness.
I should mention, the Amanita muscaria is a highly toxic mushroom, but the urine from reindeer or someone who has consumed it is still highly psychoactive, but without all the toxins. In Siberia, people actually used to drink their shaman's urine to get the effects of the mushroom.
The shaman would eat the muscaria, then he'd urinate, and then his followers would get the urine and drink it. And then they would urinate, and their reindeer would follow them around, wanting to drink their urine.
So I'm not suggesting we start drinking Santa's urine. But what we've got here is a shaman from Lapland, which is near the North Pole, who rides a reindeer-drawn sled, enters people's houses through their chimney, eats red and white mushrooms, goes on a trip, and brings back gifts. And the reindeer love this same mushroom, which gives the sensation of flying. Maybe it's time we recognize that our all-knowing Santa, who travels the globe defying space and time, is actually a shaman. Lawrence, how much do you love Christmas?
I hate Christmas.
Well, what if we embraced this more shamanistic side of Santa? What would that look like?
What I would take away from it, the shaman comes as a healer or to give advice. We should think in terms of regarding Christmas not as a capitalistic holiday, but a time when one should think more spiritually about life, about one's ills, be they psychological or physical.
And you, Carl?
you don't know the richness of our folkloric tradition, you are missing a large part of the opportunity you have to know who we are as a culture. And we should know what's going on with Santa Claus. It makes it more fun.
Maybe this Christmas we can make room for one more story. One about mushrooms, shamans, and ancient rituals.
Yeah, man.
Maybe we should be asking Santa for something different this year. Something more in the tradition of his shaman forefathers. Like time for reflection and looking inward.
This is the unnatural.
And this is why I wanted to share it with you guys. You know, you have all kinds of truthers out there that say Santa is Satan. Yeah, you know, I guess I'm more or less aligned with this type of information. This is the type of stuff that I understand. I think that's naturally why I'm going through this type of stuff, trying to explain this information and this knowledge and this wisdom, because I'm, again, not keyed into what society tells us, whatever celebration is brought up at that chronological time. People say, yes, Christmas is pagan, but this is the pagan roots of it. So I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and the reason why I wanted to intro that is because I understand a lot of these things that we are dealing with and how they are meant to be used for self-growth, self-development, self-appreciation, and more, but we are moving into a time frame, unfortunately, where these things are being manipulated, being co-opted against us. If you guys want more kind of information on just psychedelic stuff in general, check out that most recent episode with Adam of Shamanic Philosophy. We have a lot of great discussions on that. And everything that they kind of said there was true. I've talked about it. Graham Hancock talks about it as well, about how there are shamans in Siberia that they feed the reindeer, or they feed elk the mushrooms, and then they drink the urine of the elk or the reindeer, and then they have their own kind of diluted psychedelic trip. It's crazy. And this stuff is important because, again, you're seeing this archetype of synergy with nature, of living in harmony, right? And how that's the natural order of things. What we're doing these days is definitely unnatural. We live in a very unnatural society, and that's why you see them trying their hardest to create solutions for a very, very sick society. Now, while we're over here on the topic, I guess, of medical things, of health, and stuff like that, recently this week we found out that that vaccines are going to become mandatory in Connecticut. And just like Obama with the 2015 National Defense Authorization Act, these people signed this, basically it seems like on Christmas Day, and they're giving them until, I think it's January 1st, in order for them to get these things out. So while we have what should be a time period of self-reflection, introspection, healing, and as they said before, problem solving, coming up with information from otherworldly knowledge and trying to implement it here upon the earth, well, you know, the system's just like, that's all well and fine, but, you know, you guys need to get your vaccines.
Today, a flu clinic that is extremely important for parents. So if you have young kids, you want to listen to this. News 8's Brian Spirus joins us live from New Haven this morning to explain the importance of this. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Laura. If anyone out there has a son or daughter who's in pre-K, that child needs to have a flu shot by this coming Monday, December 31st. It is a law here in our state, and basically it's pretty simple. If they do not have that flu shot, they are not able to attend school anytime after January 2nd or until they get the flu shot. The State Department of Public Health says this affects kids who are between the age of 2 and 4 years old. Now, the reason behind the requirement is because every year here in the U.S., roughly 20,000 children under the age of 5 are hospitalized because of the flu. Your child will not be excluded from going to school, however, if you have a signed statement from your healthcare provider showing that the child has an appointment to get a flu shot, even if it's after that deadline. There's also a religious exemption in all of this. The New Haven Public Health Department will be holding flu clinics this week, today, tomorrow, and Friday, from 9 to 3 p.m. at their office here on Meadow Street, and another one on Monday from 9 to 1. So you definitely want to take advantage of that, especially with the kids off from school this week. By the way, we are in the midst of flu season right now. It goes until March, but could certainly go beyond that. Reporting live this morning from New Haven, I'm Brian Spiros. Laura, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. Important stuff to look at there. Mandatory vaccines, thankfully, they at least allow for people to have some kind of exemptions. Now, I talk about mandatory vaccines because we already see this stuff happening in California with SB 277 and SB 279, where you are required and mandated by law to have vaccines. If you can't tell, I'm very skeptical of vaccines and what they're putting in them. We talked about it in the previous episode. The Incredible Hulk star, Lou Ferrigno, unfortunately was hospitalized after receiving a vaccine, and New York State Senator Jose Peralta died after receiving a vaccine. And so now when we're giving these things to children, I really worry right off the bat. I think I'm not sure if I played it. I'm not sure if people remember, but we played a clip for you guys of where they were talking about how 40% of Americans actually reject the flu shot because, again, they're aware of these types of things. One of our commenters on our page actually made a great discussion saying, do you think that's the plan? Is to, have us reject it so that we kill ourselves? It's debatable. My point is this, and I'll play for you guys this clip, and then we'll get into the next article. My point is this. No one's talking about why our health is deteriorating as fast. No one's talking about how our immune system's compromised. And at the same time, no one's putting forth any healthy or productive solutions, lifestyle patterns and lifestyle changes to get us out of this unhealthy enslavement. And I say unhealthy enslavement because that's the plan, is to keep us desensitized, dehumanized, and demoralized so that they can pacify the population. And what they're injecting your bodies with is where we should start. But like I said, let me play for you guys this clip of the 40% of Americans who are rejecting the flu shot, and then we'll get into the legalization of cannabis.
In HealthWorks, here's a question for you. Have you gotten your flu shot? If the answer is no, and I'm not going to get it, well, you're not alone. A new study finds more than 40% of Americans have not been vaccinated, and in fact, don't plan on getting vaccinated. Now, this is despite the warnings, the potential dangers, and last year's record number of flu-related deaths. The survey done by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. Now, people under the age of 45 were the least likely to report being vaccinated. Here are the top 3 reasons why people don't want the shot. They worry about the side effects. Some think the side effects are worse than the flu. Usually it's just a sore arm. No, that's a myth. 31% say they're going to get the flu from the flu shot. No, the flu vaccine is inactive. It cannot cause the infection. If you do get sick after getting the vaccine, that's just coincidence. And 31% say it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work all the time, but if you get the flu shot, you are 60% less likely to need treatment for the flu.
Only 60? I wonder what my percentage would be if I actually took care of my body, ate healthy, got myself some actual sunlight, didn't just ingest a whole bunch of chemicals. So very interesting stuff right there. So apparently some of the myths are bad side effects, that you could get the flu. What does she say? If you just so happen to get the flu after the shot, that's just coincidence. Yeah, well, I think that tells you everything you need to know right there. That's why I don't listen to these people, okay? Liars. That's all they are. Is liars. Liars and deceivers, manipulators of the truth. That's why I don't, okay? I'm not gonna, you know what I'm talking about. Don't trust mainstream media. Don't trust these people. They're deceivers, manipulators of the truth. I don't trust them. They could be saying everything I want to hear, and I still wouldn't trust them because it was them that was saying it. But continuing on, again, we're not talking about why our immune system's compromised, why people are developing all of these neurodevelopmental disorders. We've spent an entire episode talking about the mental health disorders that are on the rise, suicide, drug addictions, and everything that comes with that, because these are all factors that play into where we are at. and the reason I say this is because I'm really trying to come from a state of compassion, a state of loving, and a state of peace. From, like, you look at the root word of pharmacy, of pharmakeia. It's magic. It's poison. You see, so I just instinctively have like a resist or rebel mentality to any of this type of stuff. You know, and the reason why I lump vaccines with pharmaceuticals is just because these are, like, doctors get bonuses for more shots, the same way they get bonuses for supplying more of their patients with pills. The same way we're talking about Chinese Christian cops having to arrest a certain quota of believers, doctors have to do that the same way. And so then when we have a generation of children who are not necessarily invalid, but in a state of arrested development, we'll look at the state and look at the society which created this monstrosity. And now we have cannabis being legal to grow all across America. Hey. Now, this is controversial. Very, very controversial. Now, I'll come out and say it. This is a good thing for sure, because the amount of utilities that hemp has is crazy, and it could really spur a lot of economic growth. You know, as the article says right there, it could be used for agriculture, medicine, and biofuel. There's a whole lot of applications for hemp, and the legalization of cannabis is huge. But personally, I just have to say this: I think it's crazy that they even consider this a drug. That hundreds of thousands of African Americans are locked up for selling like $20 worth of herb. I don't even call it weed. I call it herb. I call it, you know, cannabis, the plant, man. I think it's very, it's scary to see this happen. You know, I find it kind of dangerous, because what we're seeing is they're saying, okay, so people want weed, let's give it to them. And let me remind you guys that, again, Monsanto and Bayer are getting involved in the marijuana industry. And I find that extremely dangerous. So now we have to worry about what they're spraying on the weed, what we're ingesting, and how this affects us. Like, you might be getting high, but you could possibly be getting high off of chemicals. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, that comes with the legalization of cannabis. You're going to see all kinds of, and I've talked about this too, how Coca-Cola is trying to get involved. They're coming out with their own CBD style products that they're coming out with, like a CBD Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is getting involved. A lot of people are getting involved in cannabis and marijuana and all of this stuff. And I know I'm having some people say, well, what's the problem, Freedom? You don't want people smoking weed? No, it's not that I don't want them smoking weed, man. I don't want them smoking government-sponsored herb. Okay? Because I've seen people who have smoked some of that K2 stuff to where literally their ears bleed. To where their ears bleed. I've seen videos of people who were like who were literally like standing up but passed out. I've seen videos of people who look like zombies. And this is just off of K2 synthetic weed that, you know, people that's readily available. I'm 26, so I have like older friends, right? And you know, they'll say right off the bat, hey man, some of this weed that you kids are smoking now, this is nothing like the weed that I was smoking. And I'll say to them, hey man, I don't doubt it, bro, because we have these new factors in this. because we have, like I said, we have the Monsantos and the Bayers getting involved. You see, and these are all things that a lot of people don't take the time to think about. And the reason I say this before I cover all this is because I want you guys to know that I want, even if you do smoke, I want you to not only have the premium, the best stuff, but at the same time not be exposed to more chemicals. They're taking something that we used as a heal, right? As a healing tool. And this is what they do with everything. They inverted it. They're using it against us. They're weaponizing marijuana. I know that sounds kind of crazy and wild, but does it though? Does it? They see how many people are involved, how many people, smoke weed, how many people are getting behind it, like, yeah, smoke the weed. They see this, and so their thought process is, well, how can we capitalize off of this? How can we put our fingers in this, right? And then at the same time, benefit from this. How can we keep the people underneath our feet? And these are all things that people have to think about as we go into the future. Be very, very cautious of what you're putting into your body. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say. But to continue on, let me get into this article right here, and then we'll continue on. Definitely did not mean to go on that tangent, but right here, George Washington's dream realized. Cannabis is now legal to grow across all America. Quote, expected to open new opportunities in agriculture, medicine, and biofuel. December 21st, Max Lavo of HTF plan. Back in the day, George Washington had an entire field dedicated to the growth of hemp. He loved the bud, and in 1794 he even wrote a letter to the Secretary of Finance, William Pierce, in which he marveled at its benefits, saying to Pierce, quote, make the most of the Indian hemp seed and sow it everywhere. I want you to make the most of hemp and plant it everywhere on my farmlands that haven't been previously reserved for other things. The establishment of arsenals in convenient and proper places is, in my opinion, a measure of high national importance, meriting the serious attention of Congress, and is one of those measures which ought to be brought to their view. In short, Washington wanted cannabis hemp fields to be spread from sea to shining sea because it was a lucrative crop that would have had a significant impact on America's economy. Its industrial uses are well known, but in the 1900s, industry lobbyists moved to prohibit growing and consumption of hemp. There was literally no other reason for its outlaw save the fact that the big industry was threatened by its many uses. It was unfortunate because from a health standpoint, the medical benefits of marijuana and the concentrated hemp oil extracts are now very well known, and millions of people with ailments like pain, stress, nausea, and scores of others concerns lost access. And I'm going to use that as a point to shamelessly plug. If you guys go to New Leaf Naturals, you can go ahead and get 15% off of any order, right, of their CBD oil. We have some here in the studio. I use it post-workout days whenever I do the recording, and I'm up at all strange hours of the night and the day. I use the CBD oil with some tea. Man, I feel good. It makes you high without getting high. Hate to do a shameless plug, but for sure, I definitely agree. And I'll put all the links for that in the description bar below, because to wrap up everything, President Donald Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill into law on Thursday, legalizing the industrial hemp and its derivatives across the country. So that's right, we are now able to grow cannabis here in America. That's right. So all you potheads listening, congrats, you got it. So what's up? Congrats. And I can't wait to see what happens. I can't tell you guys, I can't tell you guys what I have lined up too for next year right now. Gosh dang it. More stuff has to develop. All I can tell you is the legalization of cannabis is good, because now we can grow our own hemp tea bags. That's pretty cool. That's all I'm going to say as far as developments. Look forward to that. Now, to wrap up the show, basically, and I wanted to wait until the very end to cover this type of stuff. The Haiti, the Clintons, and the Black Magic. I'll put a link for that in the description bar below. But there is legal vampirism going on, where the elites are transfusing the blood of the young. Why is this a big deal? Because people said pedogate wasn't real, Pizzagate's not real, spirit cooking's not real, and human trafficking doesn't happen. All of these things are underneath the same umbrella. They want to vampirize you. They want to, as I said before, pacify the population with drugs, disease, distractions. I didn't mean for those to all be D's, but you get what I'm saying. And now it's at the point to where they have people like Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, who pays for younger blood to be infused inside of them, to be transfused, injected. Why? Because the life is inside of the blood. But before I actually get into this, right, talking about vampires, talking about blood transfusions, on Christmas Day, the North Carolina State University launched its Satanic Student Club. Roll this back, dial it down a little bit, because what I'm playing for you guys is the After School Satan Clip. It's a new after-school program which will be offered in elementary schools nationwide. They did this back in 2016, an after-school club focused on rationalism. Just sounds creepy. It just sounds creepy. I'm going to go ahead and get into this article. A new Students for Satan Club has just completed its inaugural semester at North Carolina State University. Creepy stuff. And this is from Jeffrey Greider of Now the End Begins. And as I said before, we put this up November 25th. It says North Carolina State University launches Satanic Students Club to promote humanism, self-love, and the individual will. The individual will. A new Students for Satan Club has just completed its inaugural semester at North Carolina State University, welcoming students interested in Satanism. You got to give the devil his due, folks. He's earned it. Seriously. First, he convinced people that he's not real. Now he's convincing people that you can be a Satanist and not worship Satan. That requires some pretty deep levels of deception to pull that off. In case you haven't noticed, Satanism in America is experiencing a meteoric rise in popularity in our day. Yeah, for sure. Quote, "For some have already turned aside after Satan." And this was said in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 15. It says, "Remember when college was a time in a young person's life when they went to receive a higher education? Well, now it's a place where people have their faith ripped out of their hands and the God of this world is glorified." I find it interesting that some of the stated, quote, core values of Students for Satan Club include humanism, self-love, and urging people to be guided by their individual will. Now, where have I heard that before? I find it fitting that the mascot of the North Carolina State sports team is an angry, snarling wolf baring its teeth. Wolfpack, indeed. Hate to break it to you, millennial geniuses, but any group that calls themselves satanic students is indeed a group whose followers are Satanists, and walking after the devil himself. Are you worshiping Satan? Yeah, you absolutely are. And while I'm at it, shame on you so-called Christian students at North Carolina State for not rising up against this burgeoning evil. If you're going to, quote, live and let live, which is not a Bible teaching, you might as well become a satanic student yourself. But thanks to proving to all of our readers around the world that we are indeed in the end times. And this is from the College Fix. It says the club calls itself Satanic Students at North Carolina State, and its leaders say they promote humanism and working to build up the fledgling group at the Raleigh-based public university. So just keep that in mind as we go into this next article, as I play this next video for you guys. They are openly promoting Satanism towards the end of 2019. All of 2016, I documented the rise in Satanism, the rise in occultism. Even this year, we talked about what? The witches that bind Trump, Yes, the witches that hex Kavanaugh, right? You name it. The witches, the occultists, the priests, all of them, the satanic priests, all of them. And what's even crazier too, Mark, and I've said this before, you know, the LGBTQP organization is going to replace the church. You will have to be tolerant of Satanists, of militant homosexual Satanists. You will have to be, because they will align themselves with government, politically correct everything, and we will have to tolerate them. And if you actually don't, you become the bigot. You become the Bible-thumping homophobe who's not down to worship the devil. And that's where we're at in 2018. As we're wrapping it up, of course. You know, who can say anything about 2019? And check this out. The last thing I have for you good people to talk about is just that, is how the mainstream media are lining up to have young blood treatment. They call it Ambrosia. Check this out.
On the Health Watch, could the secret to eternal youth be found in blood transfusions from young people? Health reporter Stephanie Stahl has more on a controversial new treatment that's being tested.
Transfusions with young blood from teenagers. Some claim it can reverse the aging process. It's being tested in patients over the age of 35 as part of a clinical trial called Ambrosia, where people paid $8,000 to get the rich growth factors found in blood plasma platelets.
It's pretty much people from most states, people from overseas, from Europe and Australia.
Results of the trial have not been published, but Dr. Jesse Karzman, who plans to open a business selling young blood, says patients who've had it say they feel amazing. And he says he's seen evidence of reversing the aging process in rats.
The brains are younger, hearts, their hair, if it was gray, just turns dark again.
There's also been encouraging Alzheimer's research using young blood at Stanford.
We found that it was safe and feasible to administer infusions of young plasma weekly.
Dr. Sharon Shaw is a researcher who says they've seen evidence of improvement in functional ability.
It's all very exciting that there can be components in blood that could be healing.
Platelet-rich plasma, or PRP, treatments using a patient's own blood have been in demand as trendy vampire facials to fight wrinkles and as joint and tissue treatments to accelerate healing. And it's been tested to regrow hair.
We can actually use your own blood to stimulate the body.
The study hasn't concluded, but seeing enough short-term results, the researcher is optimistic.
It looks very positive.
But experts agree there is still more research that needs to be done.
There's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of factors that we don't know when we actually get another person's growth factors and nutrient injected in us.
While blood transfusions are considered safe for people who need them, side effects can include hives, lung injury, or potentially deadly infections. Stephanie Stahl, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yep, well, there you go. That's all I really got for you. They're telling you it has so many benefits. Wow, you should get young people's blood in you too. Yeah, you know, that's the story. And I'm going to say this because I think it's kind of crazy, right? Back in September, I had saved an article on our news feeder. I might be able to have time to pick it up right here for you guys. But it talks about how a vampire facial spa in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I'm at, may have exposed clients to HIV and hepatitis. It's from The Blaze by Terry Webster. They put this up September 14th. New Mexico health officials are urging clients who received a vampire facial or other injection-related procedures at Albuquerque's VIP spa to get tested for HIV and hepatitis B and hepatitis C. The announcement came after health officials indefinitely closed the spa. Yeah. So whose blood are they using? The fact that we're even trying to politic and make a joke about the fact that people are using young individuals' young plasma to reverse aging is crazy to me. Where are they procuring these people? And what, you know, this is if you look at some of the deeper aspects of spirit cooking and Marina Abramovich, these people that bathe in this blood because it revitalizes their body, it rejuvenates things. We are the philosopher's stone. We are the fountain of youth. The life is in the blood. These people understand these things. The elites, they are literally trying to vampire us. Now, if you don't get that by taxes, right? If you don't realize by how they're trying to stick their hands in your pockets all the time, or if you're not even getting on the fact that they're psychic vampires, they are now physically telling you that yes, we are transfusing the blood. And this is some real stuff. A lot of people don't want to think about it, but, well, we have to put these things together. Here's where I'm going to end the episode. I want to say this to you guys. I'm going to put the link in the description bar on our website for this article right here, because it's lengthy and I can't go into it, but it's extraordinarily well put together. It's the Clintons' Haitian black magic secret. It talks about how the Clintons went down to Haiti. They practiced black magic. They started doing all kinds of rituals and stuff. They came back to America and they wanted all this power. I don't have the time to go into it, but definitely do your guys' research. We have to understand our enemy, because that's what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate us. They're trying to pacify us into a state of subservience. And as I talked about in the previous segment, how we're allowed to practice but not offend, these people are offensive in their practicing. That's what you got to understand. I don't know. I am not knocking someone's growth towards understanding themselves and the world more. But the minute that you become militant or offensive or aggressive in your belief, right, when you try to start pushing this onto me, or you start casting spells or hexing people, that's when I have a problem. So people need to do their research and understand this is an organized agenda to expose the darkness to people. Look at, I think it's Alice Bailey's The Externalization of the Hierarchy. These people, they all practice this type of dark occultism, this dark witchcraft. And it's becoming more and more popular, no doubt. This is why we have to do everything within our power to stave off the darkness. This is Domestic Reformations, Competitive World Powers, and the Elites' Vampirism. However, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. I know, I kind of went all over the place and talked about a lot of different things, but I think it's imperative that we get a comprehensive view about what we see taking place. And as you guys see more developments happen, we'll be right here trying to help you guys figure it out. Realize that all of this comes from a place of love, and what we're trying to do is build an alternative media platform for truly conscious people like ourselves. We have a lot to learn, and we have a lot of different things to do. Again, I want to thank you guys for being here as we try to make history and improve on our own actions. The only way that we can do this is by truly understanding how far down the rabbit hole we are. But I digress. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have all that as well as the links below on our website, so you guys can check that out. Lastly, before I head out, we have the season finale coming up. And you guys get to decide whether or not you want to have it on IGTV, or Instagram Live, or over the radio. Let me know what you guys think. Either way, we're kicking down the door video. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.